Yo, what's good, everybody? Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you guys are having a good day. I'm going to go ahead and do a video talking about Sentinel. I was actually just recording this video, and then my PC blue screen for the second time in the last 3 days. So hopefully I can get through this video. I'm going to try to go a little bit quicker than usual. So if you have questions or you need additional clarification on stuff, go ahead and drop those questions down in the comments. Another thing you can do is join up to the Discord. I will put the invite link down below. I think we got over like 350 people in the Discord. We did a watch party last week for the Fnatic game. That was really fun. I'm hoping to do some more watch parties and maybe start doing some 10-mans and whatnot moving forward. So if you're serious about your progression as a player, I think it's a great resource. You can also get private coaching from me in there. So yeah, I don't know. It's worth checking out. Doesn't hurt, right? Anyways, let's get started talking about Sentinel. Really, I want to follow the same structure as the Duelist video. And in that video, I just kind of identified the role and then talked about some main things to be considering when you're playing Sentinel, okay? So I want to start by talking about, defining the Sentinel role, okay? Now on defense and attack, I mean, the roles are not the same, but at the end of the day, it's about info, it's about space, and it's about freedom for the other players on your team. Okay, that's really the crux of it. That's the main thing, right? So on defense and a lot of private sessions that I have with Sentinel players, they feel like maybe they're not getting enough value because the enemy team's not going into their setup, right? I want to kind of like address this misconception, right? Because just because teams aren't going to your site doesn't mean you're not getting value, right? Especially if you're telling your teammates to rotate and focus on the other side of the map, then you're naturally getting tons of passive value by having more people fighting on one side and then having you with your setup on the other side, right? So on defense, if we're able to have numbers, maybe not a numbers advantage, but we're able to have decent numbers fighting on the side where the enemy team is defaulting or going towards, that is going to be value, right? Just because teams aren't going into your setup that you saw on TikTok doesn't mean you're not getting value. If teams aren't breaking your setup, you're getting value, especially if it's a setup that has information on multiple choke points, okay? So I like to kind of like reinforce this idea. Let's just bring up Ascent, okay? Let's say a team is just not defaulting B, not defaulting mid. They're never breaking the alarm bot, and they're not really messing with your turret here. At the start of the round, it's important for you to have 2 people at B because we always want to plan for the worst case scenario, which is a rush. But if nothing's happened in the first 30 seconds and there's no sign of the enemy team kind of working towards you or breaking your util, what can you do? You can tell your Sova player to start cheating over towards A, right? You're giving freedom to these players on A to make some type of play in the early round, the mid round. They can do whatever they want over there. But you should also have confidence in your identity as a site anchor, being able to play off your information. But it's also important that you're able to kind of influence the rounds by telling your teammates to rotate based off of whether or not your setup has been broken or even like approached in the slightest, you know what I mean? So being able to influence the rounds with communication, reading the information that your setup is giving you, right? And then taking a look at that, like understanding that you can have value from the other side of the map by doing a lot of things. You can look at the mini map while your turret and your alarm bot is up. You don't have to have perfect crosshair placement on somebody peeking you, right? You can look at the mini map. You can communicate holes in the defense. You can tell your team to fall back. You can tell them to fight. You can tell them, what they need to be worried about, right? In the next 5 seconds, right? Things like that, right? Telling your teammates when they should rotate away from you because you're confident in holding your setup, and especially if both of your info pieces of utility are up, right? That stuff is super, super important. I don't think people are doing that enough. And I think I just wanted to address the whole value thing like super early on, because even if teams are not going to your site, that is valuable, okay? It's valuable if you're putting people in the right position to fight, right, on the other side of the map, okay, which is what we want to do. So now I want to talk about some things that you need to be doing every single round and things that you can my goal here with this is to kind of help you guys understand how you need to be approaching the pre-round how you need to be approaching the mid round, and then how you need to be able to read the game round to round. Okay, so let's start with the pre-round. Okay, the most important thing as Sentinel is letting logic and letting the story of the game dictate the way that you're set up. Okay, now it's important that in this game we are holding tab at the start of every round instantly, because you need to be logical in the way that you're set up, right? If you're not looking, if you guys are not using tab and reading the information every single round and letting that kind of lead your decision making, that is a problem. That's something that we need to start doing, right? Counter-Strike and Valorant are very similar games in the sense that they're 5v5 shooters. They're different in the sense that Valorant has way more variance with all the agents and utility, but also they're very different in the sense that Valorant gives you information every round. It tells you the money the enemy team has, tells you the ult economy, right? And based off that information, we want to make a logical decision on how we're going to set up in the round. Okay, that is the key. Can we be logical? Because if you don't have a baseline of logic to kind of like analyze whether or not your decision was good, everything is just chaotic. Everything is chaos, and you can't thrive in a chaotic environment. Okay, and you'll start to see the higher up in skill you go, the more logical things become. It's weird. It should be the opposite, right? But the higher up you go in rank, whether it's ranked stuff, scrim stuff, pro play, whatever, the more logical things become. Now, people get really good at masking what they're doing, but they're still the same logic, right? Like if KO is 6 out of 7, they're still going to try to figure out a way to, can we get KO the orb, right? Whatever the case may be. So, okay, when it comes to this logical stuff, can I read the information and let it dictate the way that I'm setting up? Okay, so I want to bring up this example right now because I think this is a good one. If I'm playing Killjoy and I'm playing Ascent and I'm playing against a KO who's 6 out of 7, I think a lot of Killjoy players will just, they might be on their phone texting, oh babe, I miss you, and then they look up and, oh, there's 3 seconds left in the round. Oh, let me put my turret and my mollies down and whatever. Like, I'm just going to play the round out reactively. No. What you should have done is you should have, texted your girl later, text your boyfriend later, whatever. This is serious time. We got to focus on what's happening in the game. But then we look at the info. We see that KO is 1 off the ult. Okay, if I'm going to play anti-KO now, right? Because a lot of your success as Sentinel, it happens in the pre-round, right? Like, that's where you dictate how you're set up. And if you're not reading the info and you're not letting that dictate the way that you're set up, you're already at a disadvantage. It's plain and simple. So you need to be getting to your setup early, and the only way that you can do that is if you're reading the information early. So I think actually the round before, like as soon as you die, you start holding down tab and you look at the ults, the money. Is there anything I need to worry about next round, or can I just go and do one of my default setups, that I've learned from watching a stream or TikTok or whatever, right? Or just from trial and error. Or is there something that I need to worry about? Okay, oh, they're 1 off the KO ult. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put mollies on lane, but I'm going to go play A, right? Maybe something like this. You just do like an info turret here or something, right? Or you do a more passive one and you play here, right? And now I'm telling my team on the other side of the map, hey guys, I have mollies for lane. This is anti-KO setup. Tell me when you want me to pop them, and I'll pop them. Because teams are not ready for your mollies to go off on this whenever they KO ult, right? They're going to assume that you're playing with your setup, and that's just a bad assumption, okay? But the only way that we're able to set up in this situation is if we're tracking the info, we're looking at the info, and we're making a logical decision on what's to come, right? Now, it's not just when KO has ult, it's also when he's one orb off, okay? That we need to be looking at these things. What are other big ults that are important? Rocket, raise rocket, okay? The enemy Killjoy ult. These are things that we need to be tracking, okay? What things put me in danger? And then I need to shift my setup a little bit to kind of help me get value. You know what I mean? So that's number one. Number one thing that's super important. Can I read the information in the pre-round? Can I set up quickly? And can I tell my teammates how I want them to play off my information? Okay, So that's pre-round information and why it's important. Pre-round comms. Mid-round comms, okay? And I kind of alluded to this earlier, okay? If I put my setup, let's just say I do my regular standard setup here at B. If I do this setup and nobody's come to break my setup the last 3-4 rounds, can I tell my Sova to just rotate? And I'm comfortable just holding this? Yeah, you can. You can do that. Because I want, if my setup is still up, I want to feel confident in the fact that it's going to stay up, number one. But even if it doesn't, if they come and they break it, we'll have information early enough to where I can get a support smoke on the choke and I can hold that choke with confidence, or I can nest back sight or whatever, right? Like all of that stuff is important. But I also understand that, like, okay, my setup is still up. It's been 40 seconds. These guys have not shown any presence at B or in mid. Maybe they used their drone A main already. Like, maybe they don't feel comfortable coming back to B. If that's the case, if I don't think they have optimal utility to come out and clear out these close corners, maybe they're just going to ignore it and they're going to stay A. If that's the case, we can gamble and say, hey, Sova, start rotating over, okay? So another thing that's super important with that, don't over rotate as Sentinel. I see this all the time in my private sessions where you feel like you're not getting value because teams are not going into your setup. So what do you start doing? You put your setup for B, and the slightest little, like one dart or one footstep over here, you start pulling your knife out and you start running. You need to understand the value that you're having in the round is not just fully focused on whether or not a team comes to you or not. You give the freedom, the value you have is by giving your teammates the freedom to do whatever the hell they need to do. That is the value, okay? So pre-round comms, super important. Mid-round comms. And then the last thing is, can I have a dynamic approach to the way that I'm setting up? Can I start the rounds by like playing closer to main and listening for the footsteps? Because I want info, because I want to be able to contribute to the comms with my communication. If I don't hear anything here at B, right? Maybe I hear the turret up. I'm like, okay, they might be defaulting. They might be defaulting B. Okay, I hear the turret, right? That's good information for my team. And now I can fall back and play a little bit more passive back towards steps. But sometimes I feel like people played too passive on Sentinel. They feel like they're not getting value, and then now they're making bad decisions, and they're just rotating horizontally when their setup is up, and somebody else should be the rotational piece, okay? But also understanding that maybe the later in the round that it gets, maybe we can nest a little bit more, right? So like, I think another thing that's important in Sentinel is, can we protect our util? There are too many players out there that play Sentinel too passive, you know? Can I fight off of my turret info, right? So let's do Lotus, for example, right? Like maybe, I don't know, maybe this is a better example. My turret is here. Can I fight this guy? Can I jiggle and fight this guy and maybe get a kill off my turret? Think of it, the turret takes contact for you. It's just like playing off of somebody, you know what I mean? Is it worth dying for? No, it's not. But you can put in a lot of damage, and if you threaten the fact that you're fighting with your turret, you can get a lot of value, right? So I think, and then being able to fight off your turret, but then realizing, okay, later on in the round, maybe it's more impactful that I just stay alive and I play more passive, play more safe. But understanding that early on in the round, it's actually more valuable to fight for your turret, because the sooner the enemy team breaks your setup, right, breaks your alarm bot, breaks your turret, the more panicked you become. You start asking for rotations that you might not need, right? So if you can make people respect the fact that you're going to defend your setup, they're going to have to use more utility to clear you off of it, right? And naturally, that's how you get value. You're soaking up util as a Sentinel, right? You're getting them to use their Sova drone. I mean, in this situation, they might use their Sky Dog or their Omen Blind. That is valuable for you. So you can't just play super passive and let people walk all over you and walk into your site. You need to have the confidence to defend your setup, but also need to have the confidence to give it up in certain situations where it doesn't make sense fighting for it. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's one thing that's really important with Sentinel, is like the communication aspect of it, okay? Reading the information. Reading the information is really the big, sorry, not the communication. I mean, it is communication too, but read the information that's given to you, let it dictate your setup, and then try to communicate to your team how you want them to set up based off of the way that you're positioned, basically. Okay. Now, I want to talk about another thing that's super important now. Okay. I might sneeze. Hopefully I don't sneeze. Okay, I'm good. The element of surprise on Sentinel is very important when it comes to getting value. Like, okay, now when I talk about getting value when teams hit your site, it can't be super obvious what site you're on all the time. You know what I mean? So a really good example of this is if my team is fighting A aggressively at the start of the round, okay? What does this tell the other team? Oh, 3A, Sentinel's probably on C. So what do? They say, okay, let's default C, let's break his setup, and then let's reset. Okay, that's like a logical thing for teams to do, right? They come over to C, they at least grab the orb, they get some value. Maybe they can come in, they try to break some mollies. Maybe they try to break this turret. Maybe they break the turret B, whatever, right? But the main thing here is, okay, my guys over at A are making it super obvious that I'm not there because it doesn't make a lot of sense for them to do all this if I'm just playing nested here, right? So sometimes having like no util start of rounds on defense can really help mask where your setup is. So what's another thing that you could do? You could have your Omen blind this and you could go like maybe throw the C's or something or an I, but then save your raise nade. And then you just play with your setup on A. So you can mask the setup. Another example of this would be like on Ascent. Okay, if I'm set up on B, right? Maybe I do a more passive setup on B. I do like this turret, right? Here and here. I do like this setup. And I ask my Sova to drone out B main. Okay? I asked the Sova to drone out B main because I want to make it seem like the op is set up in front of my setup. Okay? Because if you were opping towards B, it would make sense that the Killjoy would now be over towards A. Does that make sense? How it logically ties together? But here what I'm doing is I'm asking my Sova to drone this. I go up and I break the turret right here. And now it makes it seem like the op is here. But really I'm here. And now the op is over here, right? So can you figure out ways to mask your setup? And it takes you communicating with your teammates, letting them know what you need, asking for util, right? And all of this is to try to get value for you, right? By them not knowing where your setup is because they're making an assumption that it's somewhere else, but you're also getting value for your op. You misdirect where the op is, you're misdirecting where the Killjoy is, and then after this, guess what? Your Sova will rotate over to the other side of the map because now what we're doing here is we're establishing a deep line on B. Establish a deep line on B, okay? Now, what do teams need to do? If they want to push this person off this line, they need to do a couple different things. They can either util them off, right, with like a KO flash or a Sova drone. They can try to contact, which is very ballsy. And those are really the big things, okay? Now, if they do that, guess what? You should be in position to kind of listen for these things right here, close lane, and you would be able to tell your teammates, yo, they're coming back, they're trying to push me off, they're trying to regain the line on B. And once they realize that there's no op here, maybe they would just speed up onto B. So you would call for a rotation over, right? But at the end of the day, really what we're doing here is we're trying to have element of surprise on where we're set up, because a lot of teams, when they go into these default rounds, they say, especially on Ascent, okay, can we mid default and let's find the Sentinel? Like sometimes that's a goal. Like let's find where Killjoy is and let's break the setup, right? Let's find where Cypher is and let's break the setup, right? Like that's something that you hear a lot when it comes to IGLing or maybe not at a pro level, but like at least in ranked and stuff like that, right? So if you can hide where your setup is at, naturally you're going to be getting value, okay? So that's the second thing that I want you guys to do, is really try to think, like, how obvious is it where I'm set up every round? Is there any element of surprise that I'm, you know what I mean? Or does the enemy team know where I'm at every single round? People have this misconception that they're not going into my setup, so I'm not getting value. They're not going into your setup because they know where your setup is every round. So maybe that's why they're avoiding it. They don't want to deal with Killjoy. They think it's easier to go the other way. And in a lot of cases, it's valid, So if you are doing a good job mixing up where you're playing and, you know, having the element of surprise in your setup, then a team is not going to be able to avoid your setup all the time. You need to be able to be dynamic. Play a couple rounds over at B, play a couple rounds over at A, like move around the map, do your anti-KO setup. All of these things will naturally give you more value, because it just makes you, you know, less predictable, which is what we want. Okay. Okay. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is, okay, can you read the game and what's happened in the previous rounds? Can you read it and can you let it dictate the way that you're set up with your mollies? Okay. Now, with this, it's more of like a dual, like tracking the duelist pathing, right? Now, I think there's a couple things that are super important, that I want to tie in with this. Okay. Like, let's say you're playing Killjoy B, and they've went to B side a couple times on you, and they've dashed out switch or whatever, and yeah, you're still putting mollies like here and here. When people, like, the psychology behind people's decision making is, okay, did I get value doing this last time? If I did, let me try it again, right? That's generally like a safe assumption to make. So if the enemy team is dashing out switch and they're continuously getting value, maybe you just say, fuck it, I'm going to go ahead and put double, like a microwave switch setup. Maybe you do it here, actually, right? And then you put your turret however you want to. I mean, you could even put your turret like this, so it watches mid 3, right? And B main, or mid 2, mark it. Right, so you do this setup, but you're doing this because the jet has dashed here every single time. Right, so you have to be able to read what the enemy team has been doing on Lotus. Okay, if the Raze is satcheling to bend every single time, and he's nading my util right here, or he's satcheling my util here. Okay, maybe I should put a more passive setup, right? Don't just default. Don't just like blindly go in and default to the setup that you think works the best, like, or the one that you did last time because the team didn't go there. Like, whether or not the team has ults is important. Whether or not they have low money or have lots of full buy is super important. All of these things need to dictate the way that you're set up, right? Now, ideally, you want to have setups that kind of either do one of two things. You want a stall setup, or you want something that eliminates like a pathing option for the enemy team. Okay, so for example, on Ascent, we want to eliminate a pathing option. Okay, double molly's lane, right? Boom and boom. Okay, now they can't path lane on me. Okay, another setup. Okay, this guy's dashing switch every round. Okay, maybe I'm playing spawn, and I'm gonna pop both these mollies, and I'm gonna just put up 30 bullets right on this line right here, just in this zone, because I know that he can't go left, right? So I try to get a kill through spam. That's another really like good thing that Sentinel players, high-level Sentinel players do, is like, can I spam based off of where my mollies are set up, right? You can kind of give yourself a lane that you should shoot in because they can't be where your mollies are. So you can shoot to the side, the right or the left of your mollies. Hopefully that makes sense. And so letting the logic and letting the story, letting the decision-making that the enemy team has shown you the last couple of rounds dictate the way that you put your mollies, super important, right? I think that's pretty much it when it comes to defense. I'm going to talk about attack briefly, but I think those are some solid things to consider. So number one, can I get good at reading the information? Can I get to my setup quickly, right? Number two, can I communicate what's needed to enhance the element of surprise in my setup? Or can I contribute to the round by having, a dynamic approach to it where I start close, listen for info, there's nothing here, okay, they haven't broken my setup. Can I contribute to the round by telling my teammates to rotate, or looking at the mini map and kind of filling in the holes, and communicating for them, right? And then number three is letting the decision making of the enemy team's duelist or the pathing dictate the way that you're set up. Okay, those are three really important things, right? And then obviously the element of surprise too. Can we do some misdirect setups? Can I make it less obvious where I'm set up? Can I have a more passive setup, right? Versus an info setup? Can I do different variations with my mollies, like a stall, mollies where I stall the choke, Molly's where I do like eliminate a pathing. These are all really important things on defense, and I think those are like the foundational things when it comes to good Sentinel play. Okay, I want to talk about attack. Okay, on attack, you need to be focused on holding on to some space, but also you need to be able to take risks based off the information that the enemy team gives you. Okay, so like for example, let's just use Lotus as an example. Okay, if I'm putting my turret front B, and I notice that the enemy team is using three pieces of util at the start of this round, and my Viper, or let's say my Omen player or whatever or whoever just sees that there's one person jump spotting here, so that's 3 here, that's 1 here. That's a signal to me. I need to be confident to walk up B, take this space, clear this out, and maybe throw a molly here, or break the turret, or whatever. Try to achieve a goal. Your goal should always be to, 1, hold on to space, but then if you can figure out a way to break util or take 50-50, like one-on-one fights as the lurker, it can be really, really valuable, right? So if basically taking a little bit of risk based on the story that's told in the round will give you value, right? And the more often you do this, the more like you'll get better and better at reading like when it's the time to do it and when it's not the time to do it, okay? Another thing that's important on attack is don't always be the first point of contact. I think it's best to lurk as like the third point of contact. So first point of contact means like the enemy's first engagement in the round, okay? Let's say the first engagement is we fake a TP out A main. Okay, there's nothing. Okay, second engagement is Sky comes over to Rubble and throws a flash. Maybe the third engagement now is you walking up and breaking the turret. Okay, if you're always the first point of the first engagement, teams are always tracking how passive or how aggressively somebody lurks. You need to be switching this up. You need to be dynamic in your approach. The same way that we want element of surprise on defense, we want that on attack as well. Okay. One thing that can really help with this is making sure that you are maybe early on in the half, you're more with the team than you are lurking alone, okay? Understand that your mollies have value on the execs. If you show the enemy team that you're with them early on in the half, they're going to say, okay, Killjoy's not lurking, Killjoy's scaling with the team. So what does that free up later on in the game? The ability to lurk. But if you're insta-lurking super early in the map, early on in the half, people are always hyper aware of tendencies rounds 1 through 4. So if they see, oh, Killjoy's lurking from B, rounds 1, 2, 3, can we just trap this guy? Can we fight him? You know what I mean? So being able to read what you've done in the previous rounds will help you in the rounds that follow. Hopefully that makes sense. So I think if I were to give a tip, start the game by being with your team and then later on transition into lurking. But in moments where you have the opportunity to take a one-on-one or have the opportunity to break a Killjoy molly or break the turret, I think it's worth doing it, okay? Because it, what we said on defense earlier, remember, if teams aren't breaking your setup early, you should have the confidence to tell your teammates to rotate off and do something elsewhere, right? So if that's the logic we want to approach things with, can we break the enemy Killjoy setup early, right? Can I get up front B? Can I alarm bot behind the box? Can I throw a molly close? Can I go and peek the turret, right? Something low risk, and then reset and get away. That is worth, And then you group with your team and play your mollies, right? That is something that is valuable, right? So being able to read what you've done the last couple of rounds, but then read like how successful you've been. The more successful you are doing something, the more likely the enemy team is to counter it. So maybe if you had a really good lurk last round, maybe it's not worth lurking again. Maybe now you should go with the team. So, and then if you've been with the team the last 4 rounds, okay, maybe it's time that you go lurk, right? So having a dynamic approach to the way that you play, having the element of surprise is always going to be valuable to you, okay? But I think really that's the strength. I think people play too passive on attack side, and I think you guys should be comfortable taking more risks. Just like anything in life, you need to be okay making mistakes. If you don't make mistakes, you're never going to get better at understanding what was good and what was bad if you're always just passive. Another thing, too, is the mechanical value. Taking fights on your own terms, right? Not playing super passive. If you take fights on your own terms, you're naturally going to be building your confidence. Your crosshair place is going to be better. You're going to be better at taking fights. You're going to be better at disengaging from fights. You're going to be better at understanding when you have the win condition in your favor. You know what I mean? So be okay taking some fights as Killjoy. It's not like you dying on the lurk is not the end of the world. Obviously, you don't want to die on the lurk, but like you need to be okay taking these risks, because if you don't, you're never going to get better at it. Okay? And I think that's the main thing that I see in Sentinel players is they play too passive. Like, I think it's okay for you to at the start of the round say, yo, I'm gonna work up front B and I'm gonna try to break this setup and I'm gonna fight. You know? I'm not saying like you like run into B like this, like looking at all these angles in this kill zone, but maybe you run up and you break a mollies and you're holding this angle, you're seeing if you can get this guy to peek. That's worth. It's worth. Do it, right? The other thing that I think is important on attack side, and this is the last thing that I want to talk about, I know this video is starting to get a little long now, is can you ask for your teammates to set you up on lurks? Can you default somewhere, insert you, and then leave you and go to the other side of the map? Insert you in an aggressive position where you can listen, right? Get you here, or get you here, or get you here, or here. Can we, calling for your team, yo, can we default Rebel and set me up Rebel, and then you guys go back and retake A? Take Mound, and then you guys go back and retake A. What you want to do is you want to get yourself in an aggressive position where you can listen to the rotations. If you can listen to the rotations, you can help with the mid-round comms. But if you're always playing super passive in areas like this, or this, or this, you can't hear the way that the team's rotating. You can't hear a turret go down. You can't hear the alarm bot go down, which gives you no opportunity to take a timing. And sometimes that's what you need to do as Sentinel. You need to be in position you need to call for your team to default to set you up, to insert you somewhere so that you have value and you can hear rotations. I mean, you get in this spot, you can hear people, running up like this, and you can hear people coming through baby door and going C. Like, it's valuable, right? You also free up the option for your team to pivot, right? Oh, you're inserted front B, your teammates go back C, and they go C, and they get hard stalled here. Okay, guess what they can do? Come back to B, right? So don't be afraid to selfishly ask to be inserted places. I think that's something that's super, super important. Anyways, hopefully a lot of that made sense. If you guys have any questions, drop them down in the comments below. Thinking about doing an initiator video either tomorrow or sometime this week. And then probably another controller one as well. Anyways, I hope you guys like this style of video. Hope you all have a great day. If you guys aren't in the Discord already, I would appreciate you guys joining up. And if anybody is interested in private coaching, I have tons of availability this week. So definitely reach out to me directly with a DM, either on Twitter, Discord, or whatever. Anyways, hope you guys have a great day. I will see you in the next one.